Chapter 10. After what happened in the city at lunchtime with the four youths, Constance should have been more careful. However, she told herself that lightning does not strike twice in the same place. In just 2 days she had been attacked by a man at the house in Hillside and almost been in serious trouble with four youths. GD had saved her that time. The wise thing, therefore, was to stay without. But Constance was in a hurry, and she had no fear that anything bad would happen to her again. At least, not for a long time. That's how it was that she allowed GD to accompany her back to her apartment. She promised that he could pick her up there the following morning. "You won't. Promise me that you won't go out again this evening," CD said. At any other time, Constance would have told him to mind his own business. Anybody except GD would have felt the power of her tongue. She knew that he cared, however, and was genuinely concerned about her safety. GD had cause to worry. Constance now had Daniel Clark's last known address. She also had a look in her eye that GD had seen before. He was beginning to learn that Constance liked to get on with a job once she had started it. She was a talented young woman. "If you are going out this evening, I want to come with you," GD said. "If I go out, I want you to be with me, GD," Constance told him. She clenched her fists and moved as if she were a boxer. GD smiled. He was happy now. "What time do you want me to pick you up?" he asked. "Not too early," Constance said. "Say 9 o'clock. "Fine," GD agreed. At the door, as he was leaving, GD looked worried. "You promise?" he asked again, as if Constance were his daughter and not an adult lawyer. "I promise," she said. "Hamba Koshley, go well." "Sola Koshley," GD replied. "Stay well." As soon as GD had gone, Constance put on the kettle for a cup of tea. She made sandwiches with bread, cheese, and tomatoes. There was 110 time for a meal. She was determined to find Daniel Clark that same evening. Yes, she had made a promise to GD, but it was not a promise he had had the right to ask of her. Because she lived in a block of flats, as do many people who stay in cities, Constance did not have a garage attached to her house. But there were garages near to the flats and Constance rented one of these, for an extra monthly payment to the city council. It was worth it, however, to know that her car was safely locked away during the night, or even on those days that she did not use it. In fact, she did not use it often. It was cheaper to travel by bus in the city, or even to walk. The streets were congested with traffic, and it was often quicker to walk. Going to other towns and cities by train was much cheaper. Yet having a motor car was very useful. On long journeys, and now at night, it was possible to move around faster. There was no need to check timetables. She also saved money on taxis. A private car is comfortable too. There was the added luxury of a car radio and a cassette player. For Constance, the most important factor was time. Her motor car made life easier. Like now, she was planning to cross the city. There were fewer buses in the evening. Taxis are not cheap and she did not think she could charge this trip to Thembisa and Associates. It was not in office time and Mrs. Maribi would surely say it could have waited till the following morning. There had been a time in the old days, those days to which none of us wished to return, when the different suburbs of this city had mainly people from one race group. So people talked about white suburbs and African townships. There were even areas for people of mixed race family origins. All that had changed now, of course. The factors that were important in the choice of accommodation were such things as cost, proximity to employment, availability of schools, the advice of relatives. Where Constance was now going had formerly been a suburb mainly for people of mixed race families. This suburb covered a large area and it was not easy for Constance to find the address she had written down at the police station earlier in the day. Samuel had found Daniel Clark's name on the computer. It had been very easy. Computers work fast. It had also been easy because there were many references to Daniel Clark. If this man was indeed the son of Emily Louise Clark and her late husband, and there was no way that Constance could be sure of this until she met him, then one reason why he had not made contact with his widowed mother was that he had spent many years in prison. Samuel helped Constance a lot. He had provided an address. He had mentioned that this Daniel Clark was a man with a criminal record. Mostly stealing, from shops, offices and houses. That was all Samuel would tell her, however. He did not wish to get into trouble. He knew that giving out information in this way was wrong. It could lead to his dismissal from the police force. It could spoil his chances later, when he went to study law at the university. So he had refused to give Constance other details about Daniel Clark, such as his age, whether or not he was married, and even if he was in prison at the moment. That would have saved Constance a lot of time and trouble. Yet she knew she must not complain. Samuel had helped her a lot. It was lucky that his desire to become a lawyer like Constance was strong. The name of the suburb was Belleville. The housing was mainly medium-cost accommodation, so there were many small houses in the area. It was well lit with streetlights. The problem for Constance was the large number of houses, the many streets. Without a map, or a knowledge of the streets, it was very easy to get lost. It was not long before Constance was hopelessly lost. She knew she would have to ask for directions. It took her exactly 2 hours from the time she left her own apartment to the time she stopped outside a house. Majolo Street. Number 32. There were people in the house. Constance could see lights and the flickering of a television set. She could also hear the television. The volume was turned up and she could hear loud voices. Constance walked to the front door and knocked. She waited. Then she knocked again. A woman's voice called out, "Who is it?" "Constance Majolo." "Who?" "Constance Majolo. Please open the door." The volume on the television set was turned down a little bit. "Who are you? What do you want?" Anywhere else except in a city this would be considered bad manners. In the city, at night, however, it is often wise to take care before opening the door to strangers. "I'm looking for Mr. Daniel Clark," Constance called back. "I am alone." "He isn't here," the woman shouted back. "Please, can I talk to you?" Constance replied. It was difficult trying to hold a conversation in this way. "Where are you from?" the woman asked. Constance heard a baby crying. "I'm not from the police," Constance said. This is to do with Daniel Clark's mother." As soon as she said this, Constance realized that it would be true only if this Daniel Clark was in fact the son of Emily Louise Clark of Hillside. She had been wrong with 2 other D. Clarks. She heard the sound of the door being unlocked and unbolted. A woman opened the door a little. She had kept a chain on. "I'm alone," Constance said again. "Why should you want to speak to my husband?" "I am from a legal firm. It's about a will. Daniel Clark may be a rich man." Constance hoped that the promise of money would open the door, and she was right. The chain was released and she was allowed into the house. Then the chain immediately slipped on again, the door bolted, and the lock secured. "Good evening. I'm sorry to disturb you. My name is Constance Majolo. I'm a lawyer." The young woman sighed. "What's Danny done wrong this time?" she said. The woman turned and went to switch off the television set. There were 2 children watching the program and they complained when it was switched off. "Go to your room," the woman said. "Take care of the baby." The children obeyed her, but it was clear enough that they preferred television to visitors. Constance looked closely at the woman. She was about 25 years old, not much older than Constance herself. She was slim. The dress that she wore was not of good quality. Her long black hair needed brushing. It is not easy being the mother of 3 young children. The young woman was very pale. Yet Constance could tell that she was from a mixed-race family. I'm looking for Daniel Clark, the son of Emily Louise Clark, of Hillside. I've never met Danny's mum. Mrs. Clark has died. I have to find her son. For the funeral though, Danny's not in trouble, then. Just the opposite, Constance replied, smiling. That makes a change, I can tell you, the young woman said, and she smiled too, but only briefly. First, I have to be sure I have found the right Daniel Clark, Constance said. May I ask you a few questions, Mrs. Clark? You'd better call me Daisy, the young woman said. If you wish, Constance answered. It will be easier, Daisy said. Because I'm not Mrs. Clark. Me and Danny aren't married. But he's the father of your children. Daisy agreed that she and Daniel Clark lived together as man and wife, but they had not been married in a church or at the local city council office where marriages are registered, as your husband. Have you ever met Daniel's parents? Never. Does he speak of them? Especially his mother. She was a widow. Danny doesn't talk about the past. I see. Not even the times when he was in prison. Constance prompted. You know about that? Daisy asked. I'm a lawyer, Constance replied. It was easier to say this than to explain how she had illegally gained access to police computer records. He's only been out a few weeks, Daisy said, sadly. He's not bad, my Danny. It's just. Well, he wants to buy things for me and the kids. Is he in employment? Constance asked. Daisy gave her a look of scorn. Who wanted to employ a man who had been in prison, so where is he now? Where he always is, when he has money, Daisy replied. In a bar. Danny likes alcohol too much, I tell you, Daisy said. Where will he be now? Constance asked. There's a beer hall not far from here. What's its name? You can't go there. Daisy said, shocked that Constance would even suggest it. It's not the sort of place for a young woman on her own. I must find your husband, Constance said. The funeral will be very soon. And if he's the one I'm looking for, he now owns a large house in Hillside. Hillside? Daisy's face was bright with happiness. Don't get excited, Daisy, Constance warned her. First, I have to make sure that your husband, Danny, is the same person as the Daniel Clark who is the son of Emily Louise Clark. I hope so, Daisy said, the sadness returning to her face. We need a new beginning, I can tell you. So what's the name of that beer hall? Constance asked. Yours and mine. Just ask for Danny Clark. Everybody knows him. Constance followed the directions that Daisy gave her. She soon found yours and mine. From the outside it seemed to be quiet, perhaps even empty. As soon as she entered the place, however, she discovered that there were many people there, men and women, but mainly men. Only rarely did Constance go to drinking places. Even when she did, it was in the company of a man, and usually to a hotel. She was not accustomed to beer halls like yours and mine. She summoned up her courage and walked to the bar. Lemonade, she said. She guessed that it would only be a short time before some men came to talk to her. Girls who walk into bars alone do not stay alone for very long. She accepted her drink and paid the barman. Instead of looking for a place to sit down, Constance remained at the bar. Among all the faces, she was looking for a white man aged about 30. That would be Daniel Clark. A tall young man stood up and walked to the bar. He had black hair and was about 30 years old. Constance expected the man to approach her. Instead, he merely ordered a beer, and made to turn to his seat. Excuse me, Constance said. The man stopped. Yes. The evening was warm. It was even warmer in the beer hall. Cigarette smoke hung over everyone, like a low blue cloud. Because of the heat, the man was wearing only trousers and a vest. "Can you help me, please?" Constance asked. "What do you want?" The man said. I'm looking for a man called Daniel Clark. Do you know him?" Constance could see that the man's arms were muscular and powerful. He was also a man of mixed-race family origin. There were many such people, known as colored, in Belleville. So it was no surprise there were many in the beer hall. What Constance failed to notice, as she looked round, was a white guy. "I know Danny." "What do you want with him?" "I was told he might be here." "Who told you that?" "Daisy. Daisy Clark. His wife. She said." "Danny was here earlier," the man said. "But he moved on." "Did he say where he was going to?" "Maybe." This guy was not making it easy for Constance to find Daniel Clark. "Please help me," Constance said. "This is very important. Danny's mother. She has died." "I don't have wheels," the man said. "I do," Constance replied eagerly. "My motor car is outside." "Then let's go," the man said. He drank from his can of beer. "Don't you have a coat?" Constance asked. "This keeps me warm," the man said, smiling broadly to reveal good teeth. He pointed to his arms. The hair was black and thick. Constance nodded but did not speak. The man drank again from the can and emptied it of beer. He was accustomed to taking alcohol. "Right, let's go," he said. "Let's find the mysterious Mr. Danny Clark."